Cowabunga. Hello, Tom.
Hey, Dana, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's another beautiful day that is too hot. Not record-breaking hot, but is up there.
Too hot. It wasn't bad today. Although I spent
No,
most of it down here in the basement, so I really wouldn't know.
slightly cooler.
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks for joining me on Two Guys Talking Toys.
That's a thing that we are. So what are we up to today? What have you been up to? What have you found this week?
Well, I've been up to resetting my environment because we had a busted pipe in the basement,
That stinks.
which, needless to say, was awful. But now there's a very strong aroma of cleaning solvent, so I won't have to sniff glue tonight. And I got scrap iron from Classifieds.
Oh, he is better than I thought he was going to be. I was going to ask.
Yeah, I thought about passing it only because the original was kind of goofy looking. The figure was kind of like, but his little tank that he comes with the firing,
the firing effects are great.
Very cool, and it's got like backfire, explosions and things to put in the back. Here's the funny thing, though: when you take off his helmet, which the old one you couldn't do that, he kind of looks like if Woody Harrelson was playing Two-Face. Like, see how he's got the burn? But if you get a good look, he looks a lot like Woody Harrelson.
Well, he's definitely more suited to play this than was Carnage.
Right. He's got this burnt side, and then he's got scars on that side, and this mohawk thing. But I think this is Woody Harrelson.
I would cast him. I'd watch a G.I. Joe movie with Woody Harrelson as Scrap Iron.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fun movie.
Yeah. What'd you get?
Let's see. What did I get this week? Do I have it nearby? I am woefully underprepared. Here we go.
Did you cut your hair again?
I did. It was getting out of control. It was growing back faster than I expected it to, which I know for some people
that's puberty.
That's not something they expect to have happen.
I was growing the beard a little longer, and then I got tired of it, so I trimmed it back. But
yeah, like it's still summertime. It's still got to go. So I've actually got you remember those repainted Transformers I was telling you about? Actually,
like the bananas and pajamas Grimlock?
Yeah. So this version of Jazz is from that wave.
Oh, was it a Walmart thing?
Yes. They've been, and I don't know if this is just as we're having a laugh at Walmart, or if Walmart's just like, what you got? What? Yeah, sure, we'll take it. But yeah, he's part of this wave of like unreleased Generation 2 colors, and I love it. It's so strange. It's so
That's
weird.
So weird to see Jazz in those colors.
Yeah, it's like he crawled out of a lava bath. I'm on board. I love it. There's let's see, he was in this wave. Let's see, there was a repainted Conehead who was in that wave. There's also, I think, like
Coneheads, like We Come From France.
You know what? If they made the Coneheads from Transformers talk like that, it would have been so much more entertaining. You had Ramjet, Thrust, and Dirge walking around talking about how they come from France. It would have made Transformers even more entertaining.
Yes.
But yeah, this was my main pickup for this week, because I love Jazz is one of my favorite characters. I love him in kind of like any color that
because you're a big fan of the original voice actor.
Yes, I thought the original voice actor was good. I liked that it was I like that they chose Casey Kasem for the movie, and yeah, I always I guess identified with Jazz, not so much because of the name, but like the way the character acted. Like there was a definitive idea in mind for Jazz, him and Blaster. So
yes, absolutely. Casey Kasem did a lot of voices. He did Shaggy. He did Robin in the Super Friends. Like he did a lot that people may not know about.
Which is that's kind of a stretch for him doing Shaggy. Not as smooth. Not quite.
Smooth. Yeah. So, hey, Tom, we got together earlier, and I see you got inspired by today's events back there behind you, because you and I saw the new Ninja Turtles movie this afternoon.
Man, Mutant Mayhem. Everyone needs to go and see that movie right now. It's so good. The animation is great. The story is tight. The action is really well done. The soundtrack, fantastic. I think like it's not music blaring just to be blaring in the background. The way that they introduce it into the scene, it's so good. Beginning to end.
And secondly, anyone who actually has teenage associations at all. Like the Ninja Turtles actually act like teenagers and speak like teenagers, which pretty much happens for the first time ever that I could think of. Closest would have been Nickelodeon's TV.
They turned me around on it, because looking at the initial character designs, they seem a little younger than teens. But in the movie, when they're actually on screen, moving around, talking, whatnot, very much teenage behavior.
Right. So I wanted to take that inspiration that you clearly had today and talk about the Ninja Turtles toy history, which you are a big fan of. How has it taken us this long to talk about Ninja Turtles, especially with you? Because you're like a Ninja Turtle guy.
Because this will probably be one of 2 episodes. I can't even pretend.
We're doing back-to-back double episodes.
That's what I'm thinking. Because there's I would put, like, no pun intended, I would put Ninja Turtles as one of the evergreen properties of toys. It's been around since the mid 80s.
88, right?
Yeah. And it had, I mean, and even before it became a toy property, there were the comics. So if you were already familiar with the comics, and then the cartoon hit, and then toys hit, and from that point onward, in some way, shape, or form, Ninja Turtles has existed. They may disappear for maybe a year.
Culturally ubiquitous, because when the TV series, so there was the comics, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you are one of the few people I know who were turned on to Ninja Turtles through the comics. Correct? Yeah. So it was comics, cartoon, toys for you. So you've actually followed the progression of the history as it was intended to be followed. And you're one of the few people. Like, a lot of people bit onto the cartoon and then went back, and they were surprised because there were some comic representations that were a little dark compared to the cartoon.
The original Ninja Turtle series was not super blood and guts, super blood and guts, but they were violent. They did kill people. They did. There was swearing, not Deadpool level swearing, but there were serious situations that we did not get in the cartoon. The first couple of episodes, actually not that bad. I know it's cool now to kind of dunk on the 80s series, and it very much deserves a lot of that.
But that's what it was.
But the introductory, like, 2 to 3 episodes that they kicked it off with are not that bad. They're actually pretty good, and there's the action in it is actually kind of good. The humor is what set the tone for what came later. But those are probably, like, some of the best episodes in the entire run. I remember a buddy of mine had the collected Mirage books. Then you had, like, volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I remember he had brought those in, and I was like, "What are those?" And reading through them and being completely taken in by them. And then not that long after that, the cartoon hit, and I was like, "Well, this is a little different from what I was expecting, but still good, like, still entertaining." And then they started hitting store shelves, which was strange and weird and kind of cool. And because the originals were in black and white, I had no frame of reference for what they were supposed to look like, and the cartoon colors are different from the toy colors. Right. Because when Eastman and Laird were getting ready to, or when they were shopping it around, and Playmates came to them, and they were like, "Well, we get it, like, they're turtles, and we kids can't tell the difference. We can't market 4 green dudes all wearing red bandanas, and the only difference being that one of them has straps for the swords, and they just have different weapons."
It's the weapon holsters and the weapons were the difference.
So that was where we got the different colored coding for them, and then that tied into the cartoon. But even the toys versus the cartoon were different because they had different shades, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, I thought that cool too. And I always, much like other times. So we were at that time, we were in the realm of like superpowers, Secret Wars, moving.
Yeah, we were coming away.
Yeah.
We were coming away from He-Man and
right,
Sectors and like that,
and
those
then,
80s franchises that had popped up earlier in that decade.
And like we discussed last week with He-Man, the Ninja Turtles came out with their own size, like their own thing going on. They didn't follow anyone else. But again, my older brother Derek led the charge. He came home with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. We hadn't seen the cartoon yet. We hadn't seen, like, the toys is what brought us in. So we were bigger on toys at the time than we were comics. And then we sort of were on that cusp of, being out as opposed to watching cartoons, right? So Derek came home with a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and we were like, is that cool? Or is it stupid? I can't. But like the weapons were awesome, and they were so simple. Like, so the sculpts were so simple, right? Even to the weapons. And the Ninja Turtles weren't very articulated, but they had that cool look. This that squat like ninja fight, and Shredder. He looked like he was casting a spell.
I remember being really taken by the toys at first glance because they were, like you said, they were fairly simple, but at the same time there was a certain amount of like dynamic posing that they had to them. Whether it be for good or bad. I remember it was Leonardo or Donatello who had a slight lift to their foot, so you could lean them forward a little bit, and the articulation was changing because the thigh joints were ball and socket, but the shoulders and the elbows were cut joints, so they would just twist. But they had figured out that Donatello needs to twist his hands in this direction to hold his staff, which made sense. And Michelangelo's, who I think even though Raphael's my favorite Ninja Turtle, Michelangelo's, I loved his sculpt because he had that curled up look to hold the nunchucks.
For the nunchucks, I was ready to say the coolest thing. He was at least in my mind, aside from Storm Shadows, once they got the swivel grip. The original G.I. Joes didn't, but by the time Storm Shadow came around, they had the swivel grip, and he came with nunchucks. And I remember being really excited that he could hold both of the nunchucks, and because usually it's just one hand, and it was like a solid.
It was just a solid plastic piece. And Michelangelo's were too, but they had enough bend where it looked cool. I remember one of my earlier custom attempts was to snip that plastic piece in the middle, and then I tried to drill out a hole and then add a little string to it so he could actually snip. And
I'm so envious about you. Like, oh, look at this new toy. I love it. Wait, let me break it.
I'm gonna make it better, and then learn a terrible lesson because I was bad at it. So the first thing that wound up happening was after I had done, I had it planned out in my head. I'm gonna improve it, and he's gonna be able to spin around his nunchucks. It's gonna be so cool. So all I have to do is get this little piece of rope, and then I'll stick that in the hole that I drilled, and I'll just add some crazy glue, and that'll hold it in place. Not thinking that crazy glue seeps into the rope and then crawls up the rope, and it just made it into a solid piece again. So I just recreated what the original
crazy glue
accessory.
is tough to work with. I remember laying out a wilderness like a diorama, when I was a kid, and I got this piece of styrofoam, and I colored it and stuck things in it like the savannah. There was high grass, and I drew a pond and put reeds around it, and I had all these animals, and I thought I could just crazy glue them to the styrofoam, and it ate right through like smoke.
Just dissolved it. And you're like, what's happening? As a kid, you don't know anything about science. Right. Why is crazy glue smoking all of a sudden?
It's tough to work with.
Maybe
I ended up then painting a rock to look like a savannah, and then I had to carry this 3-pound rock into school. Stupid crazy glue.
So who was the first Ninja Turtle that you got?
I don't remember specifically. It was either, I think it was Donatello, and it was Derek who brought him into the house. It was either Leonardo or Donatello, and it was cool. Like, it was cool. But I still, like, when I was like, this is either cool or dumb. The jury's out. But it ended up being cool. And
So
then,
this,
watching the cartoons after, like, seeing toys, like, oh, there's a cartoon, because everything we grew up with. Now, we were a little older when Ninja Turtles came out in '88,
yeah,
right? But everything else that was cool had a TV show, right?
yeah.
So, you played with the toys and you'd watch the TV show to find out what you wanted the story to be. Ninja Turtles, when I watched that TV show, by the time I was like, that's a little goofy. But at least, what I didn't like was that Shredder was such a doofus.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Shredder being kind of a good. I love that Uncle Phil is the voice of Shredder. That's always going to be awesome. But yeah, like it went from, especially if you I hate to be that guy if you've read the comics, but if you read the comics, Shredder is very different.
Actually, I loved Shredder in the Batman crossover animated series. Well, in the comic books, but the animated series really brought TV show or movie really brought it to life.
I was really glad that they took him back to being
like a bad dude.
Serious threat, like a legitimate threat, and he was, and even even though he's actually not around for that long in the original comic. I think like he's the first guy that they encounter, and they take him out fairly quickly. But he is dangerous. He does come back. It does cause a lot of issues. And I remember in the cartoon, I was like, why is he kowtowing to Krang? Why is he just bickering with Krang? This is not the kind of conversation that they would have.
Not only
in the
bickering, but he's like the submissive.
Yeah, so it's got to be a little bit weird. But I remember I actually didn't have the Shredder figure because I had no interest in him. Based on the cartoon.
And I tell you what, one day Derek took off his like shroud. Because it was a soft fabric, and
you got to see how emaciated he was under there.
My younger brother and I went down because, like I told you, we had the world in the basement, right? We went downstairs and he was laying there on a table and just started laughing. Like, it was the hardest I think I've ever laughed. The two of us, I fell down. And then Derek, who owned the Shredder figure, knew exactly what we were laughing at. And he came down. He opened the door and yelled out, "You're laughing at Shredder, aren't you?" Yes, we were horrible.
I mean, and it was, looking back on it, it's a very silly figure. It's got the pose is weird. The weapons he came with were a little bit strange. And then he had his eyebrows painted on the brow of his helmet.
On the helmet.
On his face. They were on his helmet.
They would be like here.
Like, yeah, why?
You know that stance he takes? He looks like a young Ozzy Osbourne in concert. Like,
just needs a bat to shove into his mouth.
It's Wingnut.
So, I remember getting. I got into the toy line a little bit later, and this is where I guess it was determined by the fates that I was going to be a lifelong toy collector, because I would receive, I think it was $5 a week for lunch. And instead of eating lunch, I would save that. I would save that. And then when we went to Play,
you can't even get one meal for $5 at school now.
Holy cow. Like, the only one that's going to help you out is Wendy's. That biggie bag is pretty great. But I would hold on to that. And I would, give us some revenue, Wendy's. But I would hold on to that $5, go to Playmates, go to Play World, KB, or wherever it was that they were selling them, and once a week I would just buy another Ninja Turtle. I missed out on Donatello, the original version of him, because
that's right, you said that one time. You got the swimmy run, right?
Yeah, so I had the original 3 and it was awesome. And Donatello just, even because they were just cranking him out, and the waves were advancing, I missed out on him. And it wasn't until like the weird swimming one came out that I had my Donatello, and he just wasn't the same. It wasn't
right.
I could give him the boat, and he came with he had a little like floaty device, and he had a
terrapin. Why would he need a floaty?
And he had the giant goofy grin. So that's kind of what I would like to get into.
Yeah, like he was eating plankton.
Yeah, like he was just getting a mouthful of it. So I guess the next in the line, so we're going from the original offerings, and they were, I don't want to say super serious, and I love the card art on the original packaging.
Yeah.
How the card art was just was multiple pictures of that character doing different things, and they'd have like a little witty saying on the front, and then on the back, harkening back to having the cool advertisements for what was coming up. The whole what was it? I don't remember what the good guy said, but I remember the bad guy said, "Hey kids, want to take over the world?" And you'd have the evil guys and the good guys, and that disappeared, and then new figures would show up. And I remember they kind of latched on to gimmicks.
They did, like I know, and off and on, because the toy series ran till what, like 96, 97? Like they ran a long time, nearly 10 years, right?
The original run had almost a 10-year lifespan.
And how many? Because they had a bazillion, not a bazillion, but like 400 or 500 figures, right? Like they were cranking them out.
Pretty close, and there were so many. I admire how they came up with all, and it started off simple enough, just simple rotating mechanic things, like just little quickie action features, like the Donatello, the swimming one, and it kind of made sense because they're turtles, so they would be swimming around.
Right.
I remember the Michelangelo had that was the one that I actually wanted, because his arm was extended in it, and the wrist would spin, and you could put a nunchuck in there and have it spin around. I didn't like that he was permanently sticking his tongue out, but it made sense because that's
he was being a Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and they were.
I like the ones with the storage shells.
The storage shell was where I got what I considered my kind of like official Donatello, but I also liked how extra angry they looked. Like they were, because the originals had a snarl or like kind of a sneer or
they had that
like a frown. Yeah, these they were pissed, and you saw all the teeth and gum line. So these guys were serious, but they had their shells cracked open and their inside scooped out. So how unpleasant was that?
I've been there.
But the storage shells were really cool, and I liked that they were pushing the designs. It was just like it was a little bit further. They were making them a little more, not extreme, but like they were pushing it, so they were a little angrier, and the posing looked a little bit different. It was a little bit more aggressive, and I liked that. Funny enough, I don't know if this was something that the comic creators had in mind. An ongoing thing with Donatello seems to be that he gets his shell destroyed. Spoilers for people who didn't read the Image comics.
That was 20 years ago, more than that. 30 years ago. I don't think you have to announce spoilers.
When Eric Larson decided, let's really mess up the Turtles, and Donatello fell out of a helicopter, landed, and his shell smashed. So they carried the tradition on in the IDW series, where Bebop and Rocksteady attack them, and they get their hands on Donatello, and they crack his shell. And it's really, I don't want to say cool because it's mean, but it's an interesting kind of through line.
I like when they do that, like when Batman hit Spawn with the Batarang and they put the shoelace in his face, and it carried through.
Stupid Batman. But yeah, I liked they were going in, they had a direction that they were going in, and they were going to keep altering the Turtles, but also keep cranking out other mutants. The number of characters in the toy line blew my mind. Crazy. I loved I remember getting Splinter. Splinter was fun, but then the other characters, the villains mostly, so many cool looking mutants with so many random gags. I liked that. I liked that it was kind of lighthearted for almost the entire thing. Like every packaging that had different artwork for whatever character, they would always have a little witty or like kind of funny saying. And then of course there was Slash. I remember getting the Triceratops. Slash is my all-time favorite. He's technically a Ninja Turtle. I don't know if he's a teenager, but I
don't know that he's a ninja.
I mean, he uses ninja weapons, sort of.
I mean, I can pick up a sword. That doesn't make me a ninja.
That's true. I don't know if he has any official ninja training.
I don't think he's a ninja. I wouldn't call him a ninja. He's more of a thug.
He's an impersonator, a very effective impersonator.
Ninja wannabe.
And this was around the time that like I still kind of like the evil version, like evil opposites of whatever hero character. I always thought that was really cool. So there be as much as I love the Ninja Turtles, this guy is an evil version of them. He hates pizza, and he looks awesome.
Oh, wait. Every time you bring up Slash, you do your commercial voice.
One of the greatest things in the world. Again, and it ties through all of our episodes. Ladies and viewers, listeners, do yourself a favor, or do us a favor, rather. Go back and listen to earlier episodes where I constantly talk about how awesome it was, whether it be finding new things in stores, the joys of being a kid and watching a commercial on television. And one of the first times for me where I decided that I absolutely positively had to have something immediately was watching a brand new commercial for the Ninja Turtles and having never seen Slash before. And it was, I don't remember how the introduction to the commercial went. And it was something like, "Oh no, there's a new threat." And then it cuts to Slash. And the announcer yells, "It's Slash, the evil mutant turtle from Dimension X." And I didn't care about anything else that was on television or anything else in the commercial.
You like turned into a Wolfman Jack.
It was so cool. It was so cool. And I'm gonna link to this commercial because I'm sure it's on YouTube, because it's people are gonna watch and be like, there is nothing special about this. It was special for me, and I loved it. And
I love your commercial voice.
I immediately went to Play World, and he was on the shelves, and I brought him home that day, and he's awesome. And it's the original. It's the first run of him that has the purple belt with the yellow S, and then they changed it later to a black belt with. I was just ready to bring that up.
I was just ready to bring up the purple belt.
Yeah, and that was really neat. And because that was the original release, even though clearly I have a preference in my color choices, I like the purple belt more than the black one.
Yeah, it popped. It was cool, and it looked cool. Like it matched the rest of the line, and I like that he had a color, because every one of the Ninja Turtles had a color.
Yes.
Right. So I like that Slash had a color. I love your commercial voice, and my younger brother does he does a lot of great impressions, but he early on he perfected his Ninja Turtle impression, and he'd always be like, "Hey boss, when are we gonna go crush some turtles?" And he was like spot on with it. Every time I'd laugh, he'd be like, "Hey boss,
when's we gonna catch some turtles?
When are we gonna crush some turtles?"
I was always a little bit sad because later on, I don't know if they changed the voice actor or they told him to go in a different direction. They went from, "Yeah, boss, let's go smash them shell heads," and then they became whiny to, "Oh, but do we got it, boss?" I don't know.
You're right. They were enthusiastic, and maybe that's what inspired no spoilers, but the storyline in the new movie.
Maybe it was a little bit weird.
Maybe. So who was your first? Who was your first? Just the three original minus Donatello? Was that your first?
Yeah, I think Leonardo was the first one that I got, and I loved the swords. I loved that, and it was, again, going to how well they were sculpted. I always loved just little things that they kept in mind. Like you could raise Leonardo's head, his arms above his head, and his arms could reach back and grab his swords.
Yeah,
and they were bendy enough where you could actually like put them in the back and then pull them out, and it was really cool. It was just a small extra bit of play, like extra play feature that wasn't, it wasn't like an action-packed, flip around or super sock'em punch action.
Yeah,
but it was a cool play feature.
The simplicity was really well thought out. And that's why they were able to crank out so many toys so fast. When you think about 10 years, they cranked out 400 or 500 figures.
And it's kind of amazing to think that
and like that. Like it went from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to bam, everywhere. Yeah. Everybody loved them.
Now, who did you did you get any of the accessories, like the cheapskates, the modified skateboards that they were running around on? I remember the knucklehead, the cool like spidery thing that could capture them.
Yeah, there were a lot of cool vehicles. We had the van. We got the van, which I still have. It's out there. But that was about it. We didn't do a lot of the accessories or the vehicles or the play sets for the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, you know what? Neither did I. And it wasn't that I didn't like them. I I didn't really need them. I was having so much fun with the actual figures themselves, and they all had so much character. And then it would be made better if they appeared in a cartoon. For example, Dirtbag and Ground Chuck.
Yes.
I love those two, and I love that they're
I
a
just
duo.
love the names.
Yeah, the naming.
Dirtbag and Ground Chuck. Now you couldn't have a character in a cartoon now named Dirtbag.
You could. I think you could get away with that.
I don't know.
I mean, you could probably.
I mean, I call people dirtbag all the time. They get upset. So.
I mean, well, they shouldn't. It's just you're just pointing out some truths. They can be mad about it. It doesn't make it any less true.
I remember when I was a kid, my mom would get on my brother for calling me a dirtbag. And then we started, or calling each other dirtbag, I should say. And then, because we're in the same family, we're in a household, you know, if one of us is dirtbag, the rest of us is. But we thought we were being clever, right? And started calling each other soil sack.
Which is kind of worse because then there's a diaper implication, and it's all terrible. You know, we don't want any parts of that.
No.
So, did you have a favorite Ninja Turtle gimmick? There were so many in the line. There were the talking turtles. There were the mutating turtles, where like Splinter turned into the turtle van. I did like that. Was it Shredder? One of them turned into one of the modules, the underground driller machines. I don't remember which ones did that, but it just looked so uncomfortable. But I thought it was really cool that they did it.
Right. You know what? I really wasn't big on a lot of the gimmicks because I liked the simplicity of the first figures. You know me, I'm not a big fan of Battlematic action and that kind of thing. After the Masters of the Universe, they were all kind of awful in my eyes because they interfered with play. But I know you're a gimmick guy, so which one was your favorite?
You know what? I'm kind of in the same boat as you for this. Like I liked the standard released figures. I can't think of any offhand. Like I liked the themed ones. Like there were some that had, you know, they were following whatever theme. Like the prehistoric ones. Those were really cool.
Yeah, the caveman one was one of my favorites.
Holy cow!
And then there was like the dinosaur. But I love that caveman guy. The look he had, he was a little bigger, you know, and he had that brow.
I liked how beefy they were. And good Lord, have you seen what Tyranno Shredder goes for online? It's insane.
I can imagine.
Like I love the character. Like I love because you know this line was made for me because there's a bunch of anthropomorphic characters running around punching and chopping each other. So a majority of these characters were like they were home runs for me.
And being a naturalist and being at an early age a fan of all animals. You know, PandaCon is one of my favorites when they went through the samurai bit. Fantastic.
That character.
And then they had like the surfer dude bit, the skater and surfer dudes where you got Mondo Gecko and then the frogs.
Yes.
Right. I loved those, watching the Ninja Turtles go from ninjas, right? Just the ninjas, and that was their gimmick or theme, right? And then they sort of, because they went for so long, they ran for 10 years almost. They rode every wave of popularity.
Yes.
Like you could tell what was going on in pop culture by the Ninja Turtle line. You know what I mean?
It was interesting seeing what was going on and how they reinvented themselves to go along with it. Excuse me.
When everybody was wearing Swatch Watch, we got the surfer dudes and the skater dudes.
Yeah. And down to like the sports. I remember having TD Toss and Leo. Where you had like the football outfit, and I remember the
other guy, the baseball guy, had the pinstripes like the Yankees.
Yes, and you had Donatello was the basketball one. Like the number of gimmicks that they managed to go through blows my mind. There's a book that came out, I think is called Rad Plastic, that takes a look at a lot of the like preliminary concept artwork for the Ninja Turtles line. I really want to get a hold of.
What a great name.
Yeah, and I want to say they're up to volume 2, maybe 3 now, that I really want to get a hold of, because that, like, I'm fascinated by what went into all these designs. There's so many little tiny details that go into so many of the design. Characters like Worm, the weird like flatworm creature thing.
Right.
Scumbug. I remember getting him and being he was such a cool design. He had like the one like roach claw, and then the one human hand, but that still had it was all messed up and had
he had the curled
balls coming out
boots like the Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
I want, as we're sort of coming down to time, we haven't even touched anything, Tom. And I know you're a big Ninja Turtles fan, so I want to talk to you. I think we should do another episode because I really want to talk to you about like '96 was like, I think in '96 the cartoon that we all came to love or not ended, and then that's when the live action started.
Yes.
Right. So we got to talk about those toys as compared to the cartoon toys. Like, we've got a lot to talk about, so we're gonna have to do another episode because you're a connoisseur of this, and I really want to pick your brain.
We haven't even moved beyond the original offerings,
right?
So at this point, I'm just listing characters that I found fascinating.
I love the whole Krang bit, like this little, like the big guy and him, and like it was kind of creepy. Even in the original Goofy cartoon, Krang was a little gross. The way he spoke, he spit, he was all like, he was gross. There's little tentacles because he looked like the guy from Basket Case, the horror movie.
Oh, holy cow, you're right.
He reminded me of Basket Case, and that's what bothered me most about him. I think
the depiction of him was always like, and they did a good job because every scene that he was in, especially in those introductory episodes when he was sitting on the little tripod thing with the wheels, he just looked wet and gross, and you're like, I don't want to. Yeah, like, I don't want to touch him. Yeah, they're like, where is this coming from?
And then I love how he's, and then the Nickelodeon series, when we get there, I love how the Krang talk in there is very reminiscent of Mojo Jojo from the Powerpuff Girls. Yeah.
But it was amazing watching Playmates cram all of these characters into the toy line to the point where I didn't know whether or not we were getting a character based on the comics or if we were getting characters that were created for the cartoon that then got toys, or if they were just making toys and the and like the
got that many.
Yeah, and then the comic creators were like, we'll use him and use, because they looked different. Like Worm looked different in his comic appearance than he did in the toy form. Same thing with Scumbag. The coloration was a little bit different. Remember the Chinese dragon, Hothead, who was one of my favorite characters. He's so awesome. Good.
I love that figure. So good.
Yeah, he's great, and he's massive. That's one that I hope Super 7 gets a hold on.
Oh my gosh, that would be a beautiful thing. Go ahead.
So we are definitely going to have to do a part 2 to this because we're just barely scratching the surface of this shell. Ladies, viewers, watchers, listeners, if you have enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe. If you would like to get a hold of us on Twitter, our handle is 2 Guys Talking Toys. That is the number 2, no G after the talking. If you'd like to get a hold of us through Gmail, let us know what your favorite Ninja Turtle memory, figure, feature, gimmick is. At Gmail, and that's 2 Guys Talking Toys at Gmail, the number 2, no G after the talking. So come back and listen to us talk some more.
Anybody who wants to respond, I would love to hear what turned you on. Was it the toys, the cartoon, or the comics that got you hooked on Ninja Turtles?
Let us know. Take care. Come back. Let us know. We will see you later.